A couple of weeks ago, I raised during the Order of Business the 100th anniversary of an event which has gone so far has gone largely unmarked in the commemorations surrounding the decades of centenaries. Since then, I've had the pleasure of meeting up a group of the surviving relatives of the Peterhead Ten, and have come to realise not only the extent of the sacrifice which these brave men made, but also the unique significance of their contribution. And I just want to give a bit of background of this at the moment, and I know you're from a border county yourselves, you might be familiar, I suppose, the nature of what happened at the time. That in the morning of February 1922, the then British Prime Minister David Lloyd George received a telegram informing him that large bands of insurgents had crossed the emerging frontier before they entering the 6 counties. And understand the context of this incursion is very significant. The Anglo-Irish Treaty had been signed in December 1921 and it was ratified by the Dáil in January 2022, but had not yet come into effect. While Northern Ireland had already come into existence in May of 1921, the Free State did not formally come into being until December the 6th, 1922, in the midst of the Civil War. And it was not until the Free State was in existence that Northern Ireland was then permitted to opt out of jurisdiction. Sorry to be giving you a history lesson background, but it's important. The background to this is important because it's a very specific timeline. This incursion took place before legal partition and before the outbreak of the Civil War, which then happened in the context of understanding that a border was coming and increasing tensions between pro- and anti-treaty elements of the IRA. And understanding this context is key to understanding the individuals who took place in this incursion, because this group, which was very unique, I think, Minister, as well, that this group comprised of men who were known to be both pro and anti-treaty, which was very significant at the time. So they worked together to achieve a common objective. Among the large body of insurgents were a group of 10 men comprising of 5 volunteers and officers for Leitrim, 3 from Longford. It was a man, Frank Riley, William Riley and Joseph Lee, along with the famous Sean Flood from Dublin and Jim Davis from Derry. These were called the Peterhead Ten, because they were held in the brutal Peterhead prison in Scotland and were amongst the last IRA prisoners to be released from British prisons in 1926. A few weeks ago, I raised and outlined the events which resulted in their incarceration, but today I would like to focus on my comments today on the 5 individuals from County Leitrim, which is in my own constituency, and which is the reason I'm bringing up, who were sent to Peterhead following their capture in this cross-border raid. Joseph Reynolds from Ahacashel sacrificed his youth and his liberty to fight for Ireland. He was involved in the struggle from freedom from a very young age, having been instructed by Sean McDermott, and also Leitrim, as early as 1913, and he worked closely with Countess Markovich. Following his release from Peterhead, he emigrated to the US, and during World War II, he served in the American Army as a radio operator. He became president of the Leitrim Society in New York and died in 1987. It was his Joseph's grandniece, Linda McManus from Sligo, who first contacted me about the centenary of their release. The next man I would like to speak about is John Joe Griffin from Gartalay in Drumshanbo, a teacher before he joined the 1st Battalion in Leitrim, and then he went on to serve in the newly founded Garda Síochána, which my own grandfather was part of the 1st Guards as well, serving in Limerick and Portlaoise, and he went his reward in 1971. The next man is Charlie Reynolds, also from Drumshanbo, also joined the Gardaí after the Civil War. Bernie Sweeney from Ballinamore, a member of the South Leitrim Flying Column, was the survivor of the Selton ambush near Gorva in 1921, during which he was seriously injured and 6 members of the Flying Column were killed. Following the War of Independence and Civil War, he established a family business in Ballinamore, passing away in 1974. John Kiernan from Newtown Gore was only 19 when he was arrested. He'd not been involved in the War of Independence and was probably recruited for the operation because he had a good knowledge of driving and motor cars. After his release, he went to run the family business in Newtown Gore. He died in 1931, very sadly only aged 23, and his years of incarceration cut his life all too short. These 5 men from County Leitrim were 5 ordinary men who were called on to do extraordinary things. And Leitrim was and remains a border county. And the proximity, I suppose, of this artificial border continues to have an impact, and a cultural impact around, an economic impact along, within areas such as the border counties where we live. I know that this campaign, and so the campaign we're looking for is that they will be recognised. They'll get the proper recognition that they deserve. Unfortunately, they come out, because it was 1926, under the decade of centenaries. I know that the campaign is supported by Leitrim and Longford County Councils. Deputy Michael Carrigy and my constituency colleagues, Deputy Martin Kenny and Minister Frank Feehan, are aware of the campaign. Leitrim and Longford County Councils are currently arranging exhibitions to mark the event, commemorate the event, and You know, and I just think that, like, I would call upon the state, that because it's such a unique situation and because it was a mixture between pro and anti-treaty troops fighting in this, that they need the recognition that they deserve. Armagh there.
Shanador. Minister, there is a vote on the Dáil. Do you need to go?
Oh, I'm okay.
Okay, Senator, we'll just continue if that's okay. Okay, go on.
Thanks very much, Senator Cosgrove, for raising this here today. And I'm glad to be able to update you on behalf of the Department in relation to appropriate commemorative funding programmes that are available through the Commemorations Unit of the Department. And I think you've laid out very well here today the background and the history to this particular event, and certainly I'd encourage you after the engagement here today to engage further with the Commemorative Unit in the Department. There are 4 pillars through which historical events can be marked and remembered, including state commemoration, artistic expression, historical analysis and community-led commemorations. The state has adopted a facilitative and partnership approach to commemorations, whereby support is provided by the Department to key stakeholders and to project partners for the delivery of commemorative events and initiatives. Last month, Minister O'Donovan approved a total funding allocation of €705,000 to the local authorities for the development of community-led commemorative events and initiatives. The Chief Executives of each local authority have been written to, and comprehensive guidelines have been shared that will assist our coordinators on their commemorative paths. The framework of commemorations was established to ensure that key historical events and themes could be remembered appropriately, proportionately and with a focus on understanding and reconciliation. To ensure this was achieved, the state established the Expert Advisory Group to provide independent and expert advice to the state on commemorative matters. The committee was chaired by Dr. Maurice Manning, and the late Dr. Martin Manser was deputy chair. The group established principles and guidance for the state in consultation with the all-party consultation group on committees or on commemorations. The recommendations from the Expert Advisory Committee was very clear, and there are a number of main points relevant to the matter you've presented here today. The Expert Advisory Group recommended a state commemoration to remember and acknowledge all those who fought, died and were affected by the War of Independence. This moving ceremony was hosted by the Taoiseach and presided over by President Michael D. Higgins on the 11th of July 2021, the centenary of the signing of the Anglo-Irish Truce. Inclusivity is a core principle of commemorations, and there is a mature understanding that the impact of the events and actions of the War of Independence did not simply end with the signing of the truce. There were many individuals, families and communities across the country that continued, often silently, to deal with the ramifications and trauma of the events. There are no restrictive timeframe or established conditions that one must meet to be included or commemorated. To ensure that everyone affected is remembered, all events during the Decade of Centenaries programme were always about the collective rather than on the individual personalities. Our approach towards memorials and monuments is also aligned with the guidance of the Expert Advisory Group, in that traditionally the state has not provided support for the provision of new memorials, monuments, plaques, busts or statues for historical personage. The state has favoured the creation of permanent and lasting legacies, such as resources and research material that can be shared freely with the public to engage, educate and inform. Local authorities may choose to provide support from within their own resources to local communities to erect and maintain monuments if they deem it an appropriate approach. I would suggest that any community groups or interested individuals who have ideas for commemorative initiatives should contact the commemorations coordinator in their local authority. All projects selected for support are required to be in keeping with the principles of commemorations and are at the discretion of the local authority. Thank you, Senator Cosgrove.
So I'm right in thinking that even though it falls outside the centenaries, that they're still eligible for this. And so their route is to go down because there's been a number of different local authorities, would there be the possibility of going between Longford, we'll say, Longford County Council and also Leitrim County Council? That they could have, for both, they're working together. So really, I suppose from here, I need to be rallying up the troops here now around, even in the Shannon myself, to make sure that we're supportive of this. So the 750,000, that is until the end of this year. Am I right? Did you say that at the end? So they can still...
That's for this year, yeah.
That's for this year. Okay. And you don't know if there'll be a new round of money coming in next year, or no that?
I don't know. I don't know at this point, no.
Okay. So is 750,000, is that for every local authority across the country? Okay, small enough then. But it's good to know that they're eligible. So they're still eligible to apply, even because you said there that the War of Independence, that it doesn't matter, it didn't have to just fall within that date. That's great. Garmagad, Minister.
Yeah, thanks, Senator Cosgrove, and thanks again for bringing it up today and for explaining the background and the history to these events and the people involved so well and so respectfully as well. I think it is something that the state collectively, because of the collaborative approach that we've taken, has dealt with very well over the last period, over the last number of years. And there is the capacity there now, as I say, through the local authorities and the commemoration coordinators. Obviously, there's a number of different people that were involved from different counties here, but I think that they will have the capacity to engage and consult with one another in terms of any proposal that might be put to them. So certainly, out of today, I would encourage you to engage further with them, and thanks for raising it today as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister.